And feeling stuck doesn't necessarily mean that you are. So once you've got that clarity, it's also an ability to see that it's a sign to pause, to reassess everything and rediscover a new path. I don't think you can do that without the clarity. To start small. People are often tempted to go, right, I'm going to do this, and they're often gone through some really tough things, and they might bite off more than they can chew, and then that setback puts them back even further. So start small. Identify just one area where you can make meaningful action. And that can be personal, can be professional, doesn't matter. It's whatever's important to you. Because setbacks, while they can be overwhelming, when you break them down, I know it's a bit of a cliche, but we turn mountains into manageable steps. It's important to sort of break it up in your own mind, but also down on paper.
Today's guest is Jack Glennon, owner of Glennon Peak Coaching, a leadership and career coach and inspirational speaker whose story of resilience has shaped his life and work. In his early 30s, Jack faced profound health challenges, including 3 strokes and heart surgery, which required his heart to be stopped twice. These experiences promoted a deep re-evaluation of his purpose and identity, a journey further tested by recent redundancy after years with an organization that valued a family culture. This turning point fueled Jack's passion for coaching, where he now helps professionals embrace resilience, overcome setbacks, and foster inclusive, empowering cultures. Jack shares how these defining experiences shaped his outlook on life, work, and resilience, offering listeners practical, insightful, and redefining identity through adversity. Welcome, Jack.
Well, thank you very much, Anita. It's lovely to be here. Thank you.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I'm really excited for this conversation. I mean, firstly, I'd like to say I'm glad you're still here.
Yeah, it's a good start, isn't it? I think it's been certainly, I've had a journey of a life. I'm one to always say I hate things being boring, but I might have pushed the boat out on a couple of occasions. But yeah, you have to reflect a lot of the time and go, glad I'm here. But at the same time, and it's something that I do talk to people a lot about, I wouldn't change any of it at the same time, because adversity, as no doubt we'll talk about, definitely shapes you to who you are today.
Absolutely, definitely does. So, after reading that out, can you possibly pick one of the most courageous things you've done?
It's interesting, actually, that for me, I don't know if I found any of that courageous at the time, oddly. For me, the most courageous thing I did, or the biggest thing I've ever done, was climbing Mount Kilimanjaro. And that was before I had any of the health issues, my strokes, and also the heart surgery. Obviously, you can see me now, I'm physically fine from the strokes. I'm exceedingly lucky. And we found out that the cause of that was a hole in my heart. But you almost, going through that, have to face a lot of things, and you go on automatic. And I think it's fight or flight. And there's another third one I think someone's come up with, that you go on automatic. So for me, that wasn't particularly courageous or brave going through those. And I think other people thought it was at the time. But I just went on automatic. Whereas I had very conscious decisions to make during Kilimanjaro climb, and that was the toughest thing physically or mentally I've ever done. But I'd recommend it to anybody.
Wow. That seems like a walk in the park compared to what else you've been through.
It was a 5-day walk. It was a hike. It was definitely different areas like a park. But I think it's different psychologically when you're very conscious of what you're doing, like on the climb. And I remember doing the final ascent with a few people and feeling your body basically going, no. And you have to consciously make that decision to go 1 step, 2 step, or work through the process to keep going. That versus in a moment when probably the most biggest struggle or biggest difficult moment during my stroke heart surgery situation or period of time was, as you mentioned, where they had to stop my heart. And the most, I guess, dramatic moment of that was the first time. So my heart reacted very badly to the surgery. Okay. And I went into hospital with a heart rate of 230 beats a minute, which It's very, very high to anyone who's not sure about that.
Yeah.
I think our resting rate is about 80, I think, is
Yeah.
around that. So that gives you an idea. And what they do in that scenario is give you potassium and magnesium in a drip to try and slow and regulate your heart because it's beating at a different rhythm, it's beating very fast. Didn't work is the short story version. And at that point, it was also in the midst of COVID kicking off. So I couldn't have anybody with me for support. Bless her, my poor wife was rushing to hospital and they wouldn't let her in. She didn't go through a good time either. But my mum was on the phone to me, and I'm based here in Brisbane, Australia, and she's over in the UK. I'm just trying to unload and get some stability in my little cubicle where with her on the phone. And you get these women rush in and say, look, we've got one chance here to try and level you out, which is to, like you said, reset your heart by defibrillating it. And in that moment, you're terrified, you're very emotional. I had to effectively say goodbye to my mum on the phone, which was incredibly difficult. But after that, everything went calm. And I tell people about this now, and they go, oh, wow, you were so brave, you were so courageous. And it wasn't. It's so, and I know it sounds weird to say that, but it wasn't brave or courageous. It was probably openly stubborn, which I am. But it was a moment which I generally give an example of. I felt I had one card to play. And it was my one card to keep going, keep being here tomorrow and the next day and the next day, and keep fighting. And quite a lot of putting two fingers up to my body, letting me down a little bit. So I was so focused. And I remember mentally saying, you're going to wake up, you're going to wake up. And then physically starting to do it as well. But I went into a real serene calm. So for some people, I think that was kind of the bravest moment, which is kind of why I share it, I guess. But for me, it was fight or flight almost.
Wow. Can't imagine.
I wouldn't wish
But
it on.
let's hear more. Having overcome some intense personal challenges, let's just say, like your health setback, how have these experiences shaped your approach to leadership? And I'll talk about your coaching in a moment, but how has that taken you on your journey of leadership and coaching?
Perspective is probably the first word that I'd used. I would use. It changes your perspective on lots of things, on resilience, your vulnerability, to be open to talk about these things. You know, during that journey of the first stroke that I had, for example, a colleague was with me pretty much the entire night that he stayed. And, you know, I was completely broken that night. I was so upset. I was terrified. And so it shows you vulnerability that you can give to people and that you're going to be okay, and it can actually build really strong, lasting relationships. There is slightly cliche, but there is the element of, yes, you face your mortality, you have an extra preciousness, appreciation for every day. But there's also a balance of your body's not made of glass, but it's also not made of magic and rubber either. Yeah. So it's that facing of leading by example. So it very much shaped my leadership and reminded me to focus on people first, their strengths, their challenges as opportunities, but their potential for growth as well. Because I grew through that. And I used my vulnerability as examples to share to people as mistakes, because I certainly didn't handle everything well over that period of time. Some things I did, some things not so great. But I lead with empathy first and foremost. And authenticity is absolutely key for me. You know, being vulnerable and happy to share my journeys, whether professional or personal, and knowing that firsthand that every individual's got a different untold story. You know, my story is completely different to someone else's. No worse, no better, no harder, no easier. And that influences how we connect, how we work, but also how they thrive at the time. The other thing that it changed, and this took a while, it wasn't instant, it took a while for me to click, I think. It changed my perspective on success. So it was no longer about results. And I worked in a sales environment, so this was a bit of a tricky balance. But it was more about creating an environment where people felt supported and people felt enabled, accountable, but enabled to grow and achieve those results without actually sacrificing themselves in the process.
Yeah, I love that. I love it all. It's really beautiful.
Thank you.
I like the culture, the culture. I think it's important, and everybody is different. And I like the fact that, it's no better, worse. Everyone has a story, and that's what I love about this job. Do I call it a job? Actually, no. I just love doing the podcast. I love talking to people and hearing their story. Absolutely. So in your opinion, what are the biggest misconceptions people have about leadership and personal growth?
I think the biggest one, and it's one that especially new leaders fall into, is an element of power and having it all together and knowing it all the time.
Mm.
In my opinion, true leadership is about rooted in humility, emotional intelligence, and continuous growth. And if you're trying to be the smartest person in the room all the time and know all the answers, well, then you can't grow. And you're not showing your willingness to grow either. So these qualities that come from understanding, but not a controlling. So I use an example that I would always say to people that, I've led in the time. They would come to me, even as a new leader, and go, Jack, I have no idea what's going on, and panic. My first response would be to calm them down, bring them in, understand what's going on. And then if I had no clue of what the resolution was, be open about that and go, I don't know, but let me go and find out. Put that burden on my shoulders, take that pressure off, and I will come back and we'll work this together collaboratively, which is very different to, I know the answer. Go and do that flippantly, because people would rather that wall be up of strength than all-knowing, omnipotent almost, which I think is actually a sign of insecurity more than anything else. So it's that's probably the biggest one.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. And it is showing your vulnerabilities, meeting people at their level sometimes as well. You may know different things. No one's better than anyone else. Let's work this out together. It's partnership. And this is where I can see your culture, family culture, comes into.
Yeah, and I think there's some people, especially when it comes to leadership. I actually spoke to a client of mine about it. We were talking about, she was looking to get a leadership role. And she was going, this because that's where I'm going to get to. That's it. I think a lot of people have in their mind becoming a leader or a manager or a boss or getting that office up there. That's it. And therefore they don't need to grow anymore. Mm-hmm. And they kind of see personal growth as a straight line. Boop, made it. Done. Cool. It's, as we know, it's a series of steps. It's up and down, up and down, up and down, sometimes lower than you've even been before. So to have that mindset, that growth mindset, actually means embracing setbacks and stepping stones. And knowing that vulnerability and authenticity are powerful tools, not a weakness. But if you've got that mentality of, I'm a boss, I'm a leader, I've made it, you're like that. And it's cool, I don't need it. I'm going to do my own thing and I know the answers and the walls are up. You can't grow through walls.
Absolutely. And I like the fact that you're saying it's like tunnel vision. Because the thing is, I love the fact that you mentioned earlier that if you're the smartest person in the room, I always say you're in the wrong room. Because where's the growth then? Okay. Absolutely. This is where the phrase comes in. If you're the smartest person in the room, you've hit the ceiling, move to the next room where you're on the floor again.
100%. I think the problem is, though, is that, and what I'm seeing more frequently is that leaders are hiring in that fashion at the same time. They're hiring for people to be in their roles to make sure that that's the team they control. And it's certainly not led with emotional intelligence.
Yeah, growth is continuous. There is no ceiling. Let's say the opportunities and the possibilities are endless.
They are. I think there's a balance to be had. And I was talking to a friend of mine only yesterday about this because they were stressing out because they had their development program with their leader. And I think because of probably social media more than anything, we have, it's uber masculine, often pressed down our throat. You have to be better tomorrow. If you're not better tomorrow than today, then you're failing. It's not true. Sometimes actually stop, breathe. You need to settle. Sometimes someone doing the same job really well for 10 years is amazing in itself. Just because you're not always going up and up and up. Sometimes sideways is growth. Sometimes down is growth. But we have this, like I said, more so I think in certain people in the society of social media, masculinity-wise, going, get bigger, get stronger, keep pushing yourself and keep going forward. It's actually, in my opinion, goes against human nature because you end up burning out. And then what happens is you end up stumbling and feeling like you've failed and not being able to see failure as an opportunity to learn, an opportunity to grow, but just feeling completely broken by the whole process, going, well, I haven't grown, so I failed. And I haven't got better today, so I failed. And all that pressure, and it becomes too much.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. You mentioned that emotional intelligence is at the core of your coaching approach. How do you define emotional intelligence and why do you think it's so critical for leaders, Jack?
So for me, it's the ability to recognize and manage not only your own emotions, because I think people think, oh, that's just it, but it's also to understand and influence the emotions of others around us. So it's about self-awareness, empathy, which is slightly different to sympathy, and connecting authentically. So in leadership, for me, EQ or EI, depending on what world you're from, is kind of the bridge between vision and impact. So it's by understanding the human side of each interaction, leaders can create environments. I think I mentioned that word before. I use it quite a lot, where people feel seen, valued, and motivated to get their best, and to get the best out of a team if it's a team environment. So it's a foundation of trust, resilience, and engagement. All, for my opinion, which is essential for any thriving group, business, organization, small corner shop down the road, doesn't matter what it is. And unfortunately, it's a skill that I think is badly lacking. And the pressures of the current economic market, I think, is a big contributor to that. I know one example I've heard multitude times in the sales industries of different or sales areas within different industries is people coming together this year about the challenges of hitting their number or hitting their budgets. And instead, what that's happening is this sort of approach where a leader is walking into an office or on the phone or on Teams and going, right, what do we do about this number, guys? Because we're on the line for it. All that does is give fear. So you get a mixture of responses. Some people are going to go, right, I'm going to react fear with fear and push back and get angry. Some people will go back into themselves. But what you'll get is people not being brave. So you'll lose any form of inventive ideation. And you will lose that togetherness within a team because people will become very, very siloed to look after themselves. It's self-regulation almost. But a different approach is, again, a bit of vulnerability by a leader to go, team, we've got this unbelievable number to hit. Let's be honest, we're all adults here. This number that's been set by a boss, by an accountant somewhere, is really aspirational. We're going to do absolutely everything we can to do it, but let's be honest, it looks really tough. So what I'd love to do is let's get together and let's work on some ideas and throw some in the group. Don't be afraid to fail. Let's workshop it. Let's work together. Let's try things. But you back it up. So if they do fail with an idea, you don't crucify them for it. You go, okay, what did we learn? Can we repeat? You work through it with them. And if someone's struggling, you don't go, you're letting the team down. Where's your numbers? You try and understand what's going with them. Where are their struggles? Where can you support as a leader? It's completely different. It's completely different to the other approach. And I use the term flyby because the approach before that I mentioned, which is lacking EQ, is often done by leaders or bosses that do flybys. And what I mean by that is they'll talk to their team, they'll fly in, they'll go, right, this number isn't good enough, sort it out, and they'll fly away again. Not literally, but in a meeting, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
And what that does is that at least people go, okay, well, we'll try, probably nothing. And then he comes back next week, goes, right, what's the nothing? Okay, cool. Anything happen? No, fine. Numbers aren't good enough? Fine. No support. Not there to support. Not there to actually back it up. So for me, it's absolutely essential, EQ. If you get your people right, your business will come right in the end.
Absolutely. So when it comes to handling setbacks, both personal and professional, what would you say to someone who's feeling like they're stuck?
Good question. The first bit of advice I generally give anybody when they're going through adversity or they're feeling stuck or feeling challenged is allow yourself to feel it, to feel the emotions that you're going through, feel the journey that you've been through and get it out here. And whether that's talking to a professional coach, talking to a professional counselor, talking to a friend, family, partner, girlfriend, boyfriend, doesn't matter. Whether it's journaling's great. Even if it's jargon, even I've got horrendous writing. So I've done some journaling in the past and no one, not even I can read it. So, but it's getting it out of your head. That would always be the first port of call that I would advise. And then you're able to see and get some clarity. So you're able to start to remember that this isn't going to last. And feeling stuck doesn't necessarily mean that you are. So once you've got that clarity, it's also an ability to see that it's a sign to pause, to reassess everything and rediscover a new path. I don't think you can do that without the clarity. But my advice is to start small. People are often tempted to go, right, I'm going to do this, and they're often gone through some really tough things. And they might bite off more than they can chew. And then that setback puts them back even further. So start small, Identify just one area where you can make meaningful action. And that can be personal, can be professional, doesn't matter. It's whatever's important to you. Because setbacks, while they can be overwhelming, when you break them down, I know it's a bit of a cliche, but we turn mountains into manageable steps. So it's important to sort of break it up in your own mind, but also down on paper. And to go back a couple of steps, another area is really important is to surround yourself with people who lift you up. And this can sometimes be quite challenging because you actually need to assess the people in your life. And some people in our life, and we all know this, we might not like it, are actually not there to lift us up.
Yes.
Intentionally or not. And especially with social media, sometimes this is a time to go, I need to reassess my friend list on Instagram or Facebook or TikTok or whatever it might be. Because every time I see that person's post, it gives me a negative feeling because of the history in the past and whatever. Cut them, get rid of it. They're not there for you. It's not mean. It's just part of life. You've got to move forward. Surround yourself with people who will lift you up. I saw a great, I think it was on Instagram, to be fair, great quote. Surround yourself with people who will cheer for you when you're not in the room. And those are the people that you want. So do that. Focus on your small wins. And don't underestimate the power of resilience because you will get through it.
Thank you. That's brilliant. So redundancy is a difficult experience that many people face. Can you share how you've helped clients redefine their identity and thrive after setback?
Similar to before, it's redundancy, and I know this from my experience and people I've worked with, it does feel like an ending. I mean, if you've been there 2 months, not so much. But, for a lot of people, especially in the last, what I've seen, I mean, it happened to me beginning of this year, but I know it's been more prominent in the last 18, 24 months. But it is a launch pad for profound growth. It is the opportunity to reset. It is an opportunity to reassess. I know for myself that now having that time to look back and reflect, I was not in a great place mentally, probably the last year of that employment. I certainly wasn't enjoying the environment that I was in. I would have never left. No way. Because I was in it. So it took the redundancy to get you out of the weeds. So it's almost that forced refresh. So what I do is I work with clients to help them reconnect with their core strengths. And I talk about non-negotiables and looking at your career and going, reassess everything. What really now to you is non-negotiable? When you're looking for a job, for a career, for a business to work for a leader to work under, whatever it might be, everyone's non-negotiables are different. So it could be practical things like your working environment, whether it's a hybrid, it's an office, a working home, what it might be. It could be financial package. It could also be, I want a stable 9 to 5, or I want a high risk because I thrive under high pressure environment. Okay, that's fine. Everyone's different. So it's working out what your non-negotiables are. And then from that point, really honing in on those core strengths and clarifying what they want, what gets them up in the morning, what gives them, I talk about the fizz. You mentioned earlier, Anita, actually brilliantly, this doesn't feel like a job. I think everyone would love to have a job that every day it doesn't feel like a job. In reality, we can't always get that, let's be honest. But if we can strive towards that, whether it's leadership, whether it's accounting, whether it's working just with people, whether it's working solo on projects, whether it's creating something, if it's giving you that initial fizz, go after it and align it with your core strengths. So what we do is we map out the skills, the values, and their achievements to make up kind of their career DNA and create a vision for a path that both excites them, but also gives them fulfillment. So this process shifts their mindset from a loss to an opportunity, and empowers them to move forward with a renewed sense of purpose, but also excitement. Going, that was really tough. I've processed it. I've felt it, all the things we talked about before, but now I'm seeing the clarity and seeing the future. And it's not going to be necessarily easy. It is a really tough market right now. Especially if you're wanting to change industries, it's really, really tough. So it's also about using that resilience that we talked about and go, okay, I'm going to keep going this path. It's going to be hard because I'm committed to changing industries. Or having that confidence in yourself in the long term to go, I've tried this for too long. This is the long-term plan, but I need to take a sidestep.
Mm-hmm.
And what does that plan look for? Again, it's not failure. It's just a change. Knowing that that path is still there, but practicalities have to be done. So it's
Brilliant.
very much about rebuilding not just a career, but also an empowered identity.
Yes, brilliant. And I think you've answered my next question, some of it, somewhat, but I'm still going to ask you. So, who do you work with? Tell me more about your coaching and what does that involve?
Great. So, yeah, I mean, I work with a myriad of different professionals, but mainly focused on people in career transition and leaders, and leaders that are brand new to leadership more than experienced ones. Because I think I generally find experienced ones don't want coaching, unfortunately. But new leaders are brilliant because, and I think it's so important that they get support and coaching the right way. Because so often people are put into a leadership role because they're the best at the job, not necessarily because they're the best at leadership. And what I mean by that is you could have a team in a marketing team, for example, and have one end and a space for a head of marketing. And Jerry, sorry to anyone who's called Jerry, is brilliant at marketing. So they go, cool, Jerry's our man. But he's got no idea how to lead people. And he's thrust in this role, got no idea about conflict resolution or accountability or any of these things. And he's got a remote team, so that's another element that a lot of people have to manage. But he's not given the skills. So a lot of the time it's new leaders as well, which is brilliant because it enables them to get that foundation or people stepping into a leadership role. And what I do is it's all online. So it's enabled to be flexible, different time zones around the world, whether it's the UK or I talk to someone in San Francisco as well, which is great. And it's enabling them to work with me and really work out a path to what they want to get out of it at the same time. So it's great.
It's brilliant. Brilliant, Jack. So, this is a big question considering your history with your health. What is one of the most important lessons you've learned over your life so far?
That is a really good question. I'm going to be cheeky and do two. My first lesson would be no matter what, stay authentic and true to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And the second one is you're going to be okay. Because, and I watched Gordon Ramsay recently did an interview, which I thought was brilliant. And he's someone who is, whilst diversity, but I think I've got tons of respect for his work ethic and success. And he mentioned something amazing about resilience. And he talked about, again, I'm going to use the metaphor of having cards dealt. He said, everyone's dealt adversity and tough times in their life. The sooner you're dealt a tough card, the better.
Mm-hmm.
Because you've realized life is not roses and it is a series of ups and downs. But what that first card gives you resilience. And the more cards you get dealt, the more resilience you build. And every bit of challenges that I've had over my life, I don't regret a single one because they've formed me to who I am. I'm certainly not perfect, but they've enabled me to grow. And without those, I certainly wouldn't be where I am today. So I'll steal his quote, which is a golden one. He says, "Never fear the storm. Get comfortable dancing in the rain."
Wow.
That's great.
Love it. Love it. What resources do you recommend, tools, daily steps to anyone that wants to start to define identity through adversity?
The tools and the steps, firstly, it depends on your situation, but structure is always somewhere I'll go to. And sometimes certain people need tons of structure, otherwise they struggle to cope. Sometimes people love it fast and loose. It's a term we use quite easily here. The balance is really good. But it's very situational dependent. I'll use the redundancy one, as you mentioned already. So in that scenario, what I recommend and I work with people to do is put structure in the mornings is, quote, work stuff. So whether that's working on your LinkedIn profile, optimizing your resume, applying for roles, interviews, whether it's starting a new course, morning is work. So you get up, you shower, you put a shirt on, you're not doing it just lounging on the sofa. You're in a mode of structure and going, I'm working on improving myself. The afternoon is for you, and that is for your well-being, mentally or physically. And it's a commitment. So it's getting out of the house if you can, going for a walk or going to the gym or going, playing tennis with a mate or just doing something that makes you happy. Be selfish for the benefit of you physically and or mentally. And the evening is social time. So whether you're living with a spouse or family, it's time with the kids or your wife or your husband, or if you're living alone, seeing some friends now and then. Connecting with people is super important. With this structure, there needs to be an allowance of you being human, because there's certain days you're going to wake up and go, I can't, I'm really struggling. I just can't apply for another job today and just deal with rejection again and over and over, whatever it might be. Allow yourself that day. It's okay. Take that day and go, today, not today, but tomorrow I'm doing it, and commit to doing it tomorrow. And then you make sure you do it. So you regain that structure. So that's that little bit of discipline, which we all need to bring that control back. Because a lot of this, Anita, is about that loss of control. So if you put that little bit of structure in, but allow yourself that flexibility with discipline, you're starting to gain that control back and getting some joy in your life as well, whether it's from the things improving in the afternoon with the connections of the right people and progress, steps moving forward professionally.
I love that. Really great. Thank you. So where can the listeners find you online? What's your website, Jack?
My website is www.glennonpc. The company's Glennon Peak Coaching, but I thought it'd be a bit unfair for me to have to type the whole thing. So I've shortened it to Glennon PC, P for Peter, C for Charlie.com. So we've got the website there, and also handle Glennon PC is on Instagram as well.
Excellent. So before we finish off, I've got to ask you, tell me more about your guitar I can see in the background.
Yeah, so that is a guitar in the background. It's not my favorite guitar. That's still in the UK, ironically, which was a gift by a close family friend. The guitar is probably the only instrument I've ever picked up and managed to actually commit and play because I wasn't taught. As a young'un, I guess, we were all taught different instruments at school. I hated all of them, whether it was piano. I think I had a flute at one point. No idea why I did that. But I couldn't get into any of them and commit to them. But I went to a festival in the UK when I grew up there, and I bought a guitar there. And a couple of family friends were musicians and started to play chords and really enjoyed it. So now I have one over here that I occasionally pick up.
Brilliant. Yeah, I can assure you, I have no rhythm in me. So, yeah, that's brilliant. I had to ask. It looks lovely there.
It does look lovely there. I'll be honest, since it's hung there, it hasn't come down yet.
Bless. Make it your mission.
It's going to be one of the things I need to do.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing your insightful wisdom and knowledge with us today. And by doing so, I know you have helped so many others make a difference. I'd really like to acknowledge you for that, Jack Glennon.
Thank you. It's my absolute pleasure, Anita.
So we are all about Create the Courage to Be Fearless podcast here. What is your definition of courage?
Really good question. Firstly, I think courage is in the eye of the beholder, as I've sort of alluded to a little bit, Kilimanjaro. For me, it's the strength to face the unknown, even when it's risky or uncomfortable, and to continue moving forward, but not just move forward blindly, move forward with the integrity and the purpose, despite that fear or doubt. It's keeping true to yourself, as I mentioned before. So bravery, I guess, in this context could also mean the resilience to redefine oneself, as we spoke about, after life or career challenges, embracing growth, and taking steps to lead others. So it's a bit of a balanced one.